Okay, this is Glen Parnham. I'm Director of Research and Development for International Health. I'm based in Scottsdale, Arizona. And on the phone with me today for a absolutely life-saving interview is one of my favorite people in the world, a personal friend. But Dr. Sherrill Sellman is a world-famous author. She's a naturopathic doctor. She's a researcher. Anytime I want to know exactly what's going on, I call up Dr. Sherrill, international recognized authority on the dangers of electromagnetic pollution coming from cell phones and cordless phones and all the digital age things. And just got back from Australia, but about a month ago, she was here in Scottsdale. In fact, she was here for a day teaching about the superseed Salba, which I hope to have a chance to talk about at the end of the CD. And we got together and met with Sherry Lund, head of the Lund Foundation. And then as I was talking to Dr. Sherrill about my frustration that, you know, everybody's pretty much heard for years, we live in a toxic environment. And I have been researching for months trying to find the most effective chelating agent to take out the toxic heavy metals and everything else in the body. And in talking to doctors who have used oral chelation, and you can go into doctors' offices and do IV chelation for thousands of dollars, and then talk to hundreds of people who had gone through that or had been on oral chelation products, limited success. Well, now we know why, because Sherrill introduced me to probably one of the greatest new medical discoveries it's called Total Body Detox. Because let's be honest, folks, if you have a cesspool in your backyard, are you going to clean it up by pouring in organic foods and vitamins and good things? No, you got to drain the swamp. And this answers the question to me about why most people, only have a limited response as they change their diet and add super nutrition because they're not draining the swamp. So we're going to talk about Total Body Detox first because this is a major breakthrough. And then also finding that these toxic heavy metals increase the pathogenic infections in the body. And we're going to talk about that because this dual product called Total Body Detox, I think, is an absolute breakthrough. We've been having phenomenal results. So, Sherrill, thank you for taking your time. I know you're a very busy lady.
It's always a pleasure to talk to you, Glenn.
Okay, since we're on a time restraint here, let's get right into it. When you were here, you were talking about what's happening to babies coming out of the womb. I've got your article here that's not even out yet. It's going to be coming out, I believe, in January of 2009 in Total Health magazine, I believe.
Right. Talk
to us about what's going on.
Well, in regards to what you were saying earlier, and specifically relating to that last comment about infants, you know, we have in the last really 2, maybe 3 generations been exposed to levels of toxicity that really have never existed in the human race before. The collection of chemicals, you know, since World War II, it is estimated that we have created 100,000 different chemicals, and new chemicals are being created every year. So where do all these chemicals go? You know, they're in our food, they're in the air, they're in the water, and they are in our bodies. And, of course, being toxic chemicals, the body doesn't perceive them as benign. They actually can cause birth defects. They can cause genetic damage. They can become carcinogens. They can be hormone disruptors. And what's really scary is, you know, very few of them have been tested, very few, and it's almost impossible to test the synergy effect when all of these chemicals combine together. So basically, we have permutations of these chemicals that are wreaking havoc on our bodies, and we don't even understand the full consequence, and no one has ever investigated, nor can they ever investigate what the real toll will be to our health.
What would you compare, you know, of all these chemicals, and they're out there and everything, wouldn't you say that the toxic heavy metals, primarily mercury and lead, are the worst of the worst?
Well, in a hierarchy of worseness,
yes,
you know, absolutely. You know, it is estimated that we have between 400 to 800 toxic, carcinogenic, hormone-disrupting, and gene-damaging chemicals already stored within our body.
Oh, my God.
children in one study on the cord blood of children, which actually was the cord blood of newborns. So they took a newborn and looked at, the blood in the umbilical cord, and the average number of chemicals in the blood of newborns was 287 different chemicals. Now that means that these are chemicals that the fetus is swimming in and absorbing. And Glenn, you may not know this, but this is a very disturbing statistic that I've recently learned. We carry our body burden of chemicals, we adults. If a woman becomes pregnant, she will transfer up to 2/3 of her body burden of toxic chemicals to her firstborn child.
What's going on? Because we were talking that day with Sherry Lund from the Lund Foundation. There's babies being born coming out of the womb with brain cancer?
Well, when you realize that if a mother has, let's say, 400 different chemicals in her body, and it's the firstborn who gets the biggest hit of that transference, so there may be 250 or more chemicals transferred from the mother into the developing fetus that are potentially carcinogenic and hormone disrupting and, destructive to our health, either immediately in the development of that fetus or possibly down the track, making that person more susceptible to and more sensitized to these toxic exposures, which leads to all the chronic illnesses. So, yes, it's possible that we are seeing more and more children born with these terrible, chronic diseases like brain cancer. We have, young children being born or being diagnosed. I mean, we're talking under 10 years of age being diagnosed with type 2 diabetes. It's not just the food, Glenn. It is the toxic exposure that is altering things on a cellular physiological level while we're still in the womb. It's like hardwiring us in these new ways.
Well, and then the other... Okay, because in my research into chelation products, all right, and, if you go on the internet on a search engine and type in a chelation, you get thousands upon thousands of websites. And that's where I found myself very frustrated. I couldn't find, like a lot of clinical studies on these, on these products which claim to remove the heavy metals and the free radicals from the body. And then in talking to people who had used them, limited success. Well, now we know why. Because this article that you wrote, okay, and again, you have thousands of published articles that have been in some of the greatest magazines around the world, okay, and that when we find out now that these toxic heavy metals, and if we talk about mercury, there is no safe level of mercury. So if a person has mercury fillings, and how many people don't have mercury fillings, and that, talk about what has been found out about these toxic heavy metals stimulating the growth of pathogenic infections right alongside of them.
Yeah, let's just kind of expand on the heavy metal issue, because as you so rightly said, heavy metals, and we're talking about mercury and lead and arsenic and cadmium, these are extremely toxic substances. And number one on that list, the biggest culprit would be mercury. Mercury has no safe levels. It is a huge toxin to actually every single system. It compromises all the enzymatic reactions. It affects the immune system, the neurological system, affects the endocrine system. It basically, you can say that heavy metals, particularly mercury, is a factor, either a contributing factor or a cause to things such as asthma and allergies and MS and Alzheimer's and thyroid imbalances and uterine cancers and autism. And I mean, the list goes on and on and on.
Epidemic levels of all those things you just mentioned are going on.
Yes.
Yes.
I mean,